Doesn't even matter anymore. It's my favorite thing.
We're live.
Oh, there it is. Did it and did and did.
Whoa.
That's what Kaylin was doing right before we actually went live.
Yeah. That was wild.
I'm doing the fake Kaylin hummy singy thing while also itching my head for lice.
Bro, I don't have lice. How dare you?
How dare you?
How dare you? I still haven't started recording in Reaper because for the life of me,
totally
I don't remember
fine.
how to do it.
It's fine.
The Zoom audio quality is so rough.
Yeah, it really is actually.
How does one record audio? Like, what's the easiest way to record audio on a
Reaper?
Just like a basic audio setup.
Just like a basic audio setup, like a Reaper or something like that. Probably. It's probably
almost like a.
You know that thing that we always do? It's probably the easiest thing
Reaper
to do.
For ages, man. I can't. There's so many buttons in here. I can't even.
Yeah.
There's so many buttons.
There's a lot of buttons.
When I press the record button, it starts playing back audio that I recorded like 11 months ago.
I don't know what the deal is with that. Sounds like a pebcac. You know what a pebcac is?
I do know. I do know a little bit about that. I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know what a peb to our viewing audience, do you guys know what a pebcac is?
Chime in.
Anyone?
Hey, listeners at home, chime in if you know the answer to the question of the day. What is a pebcac?
You're listening to MageTalk Live. This is
Keep going. Yeah. That's so good. That was so
looking
good.
for caller 39, caller 39. Answer the question of the day. Question of the day today is, what is a pebcac? Do you know what a pebcac is? Call in right now, 1-800-MageTalk.
I've got Samantha from Cincinnati. Samantha, how are you doing today?
You listen to a lot of podcasts, right?
I do. Yeah.
If you listen to a lot of podcasts, there's a podcast out there called the Jason and Scott Show.
Oh man, I don't know if I've heard of that.
Yeah. It's Jason Goldberg and Scott Wingo. They're both like veteran e-commerce, like OG e-commerce people.
Okay.
They have a lot of street cred. Both of them, I think, were board members or founding members of Internet Retailer and NRF and that sort of thing, right? So they go back a long way. I believe Jason co-founded Channel Advisor. Anyway.
Oh, okay. Heavy hitters.
Yeah, heavy hitters. Big personal networks.
Industry professionals.
And they're exactly. The sartorial type, if you will.
Ooh.
The two of them have been doing podcasts for a little while, and they have this style of doing podcasts that are very much in that old radio kind of thing.
Oh, okay. That's so funny.
And I love when podcasts do the radio thing.
Yeah.
My favorite thing.
I literally had this thought the other day of like, why is it like the whole radio style, that whole style, like, why isn't there more of that in podcasting? Like, why? Like, it's because it's
because it sounds, I'll give you an example of the reason why, Kaylin. Because it sounds like this. Welcome to the Jason and Scott Show. This is episode 147 of the Jason and Scott Show. I'm your host, Jason Retail Geek Goldberg. And that's what it sounds like.
Like, what is it about radio? Is it just that they're like so over the top to get listeners that are distracted and like changing channels that they have that over the top style?
All of that. Yes.
Podcasts are more like opt-in kind of.
It is.
It's so funny.
It is very much like the passive listening audience of the podcast. That's why NPR, I think, plays really, really well for the podcaster type audience, because the passive listening, it's like non-intrusive. It's not trying to get it's like not overtly trying to get your attention, you know?
Yeah. Totally.
Of course, we can always amp that up on the MageTalk side if we really wanted. We can always just be like, this is MageTalk. How's it going, MageTalk? Oh, MageTalk.
Nice. Yeah, no, I mean, let's call it what it is. We can play at either end of the spectrum because of the tremendous amount of talent that we bring to the table.
It's true. We're probably the most
In the
flexible team in
podcast game.
podcasting.
That should be on our pitch deck is to advertisers. We should say we're the most flexible team in podcasting.
I want to make, you were putting out an offer not too long ago about making Webflow sites for people just to do it.
Yes.
I want to make a Webflow site that does like talks about MageTalk, but it amps up all the things that people typically do in pitch decks, like a combined 347 years of experience Philip Kalin bring to the podcasting industry.
Right. That'd be hilarious. I'd love to do that.
We need to do more. I need more of those combined years of experience metrics.
Right.
It's like, the most useful thing in the world is to know how many years everybody in total have been thinking about a subject.
Yeah. Like we pull in like everybody that's ever touched like MageTalk in any way, shape, or form, paid or unpaid.
Exactly. Yeah.
That number.
MageTalk, yes, represent 247,000 years of combined experience.
Exactly. Good times, man. Good times.
Are
Well,
you recording your audio yet?
I am.
Good.
Matter
Okay.
of fact, yeah, I am.
All right, let's do this. You ready?
Oh yeah, let's do this. Let's jump.
Remember when we used to clap?
Oh yeah. Let's
You want to clap
for old time's sake?
Let's do it.
1, 2, 3. That was beautiful.
That's so gorgeous.
That was absolutely.
Man, back when we
tremendous.
started this show, we had to like clap to sync stuff, you know? This is the dark ages.
The dark ages. I know. And now we're recording several places at once, but that sync is going to come in handy. And can we pivot our podcast to just purely reminiscing on
what our podcast used to be? Yeah. There's nothing more meta. That'd be great. We should do that.
Good. Yeah. We gotta pivot to something. It's either gonna be no code.
I like that. So I pitched that to you the other week.
I love that.
I like this idea of doing a no code podcast.
I am neck deep in Airtable.
You're probably deeper in Airtable than I am because I haven't touched it since I set it up.
Well, you're the one that's just running to it. So
I know.
By the transitive property, we're both deep in it.
You're neck deep. I'm in over my head.
Yeah.
Do you remember? Let's do a little MageTalk quiz for our listening audience at home to play along. Do you remember?
Absolutely.
What the first episode of MageTalk's title was?
Hello Bar. No.
It was in there. We talked about Hello Bar, but that's
Hello
not
Bar.
what the title.
That wasn't
was.
the title. Oh, the title. I don't. I'm gonna have to say pass.
The Voltron of Magento.
Oh God, how did I forget that? Ivan Ciperni, I4, Interactive 4.
That's right.
Who else? They were snapping up some talent back at that time.
They were.
They were going for a world domination expansion move.
And Mediotype did it, better. It's because they didn't have Commerce Hero to rely on back then.
That could be a factor. That could certainly be a factor.
I think it's a factor. It is a factor.
In the calculus there. Yeah.
Also mentioned was My Buys, which was how we actually came to know each other. It's a painful listen. Don't go back and listen.
The My Buys logo.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was such an oldie and a goodie.
You know what's funny is it's way better in our memories than it actually was in real life. Because that was actually really painful to listen to. We didn't know what we were doing.
Oh God, yes.
And if you think we don't know what we're doing right now, and we're just a gossip-filled rant, wild speculation show, then you should listen to us back then.
I have to say, I'm pulling up your Twitter because I was looking for. Oh, nice. The most flexible. I'm seeing the tweet you posted. Because I'm looking for the link to the article you wrote on LinkedIn.
Oh yeah,
so
it's probably deep back there because I've been tweeting all day long.
Yeah, which I actually want to talk about. But then as I was pulling it up, I saw your bio, which I guess I haven't read in a while. Co-founder / e-commerce nihilist. which is, and I remember that tweet you posted recently, which is like made me really crack up. It was like, I'm trying to find it. It was like, nothing matters at all. Subscribe to my newsletter. What was that?
Yeah. Basically, this has all gone to hell. That's what it meant. That's what the theme, the tone of our newsletter has basically become, what's the point? What's the point? We're all automatons, in a purchasing machine run by George Soros. Subscribe.
Please subscribe.
Please subscribe.
I chuckled to myself when I saw that.
Yeah. And if you don't die an e-commerce evangelist, you live long enough to become an e-commerce nihilist. That's where I'm at right
Great
now.
one. That might be a t-shirt. It's a bit long for a t-shirt. I had a great, very simple idea for a t-shirt today at the gym. Thought leader. Just the words thought leader.
Just thought leader.
That's Is that good?
How is that not a t-shirt yet?
How is that?
I'm going on Amazon right now. Thought leader t-shirt.
That was my immediate.
That has to exist.
That was my immediate second thought, was that definitely exists. And then I was like, I don't care. I want to make a t-shirt of it anyways. I don't care if it exists or not.
What font would this be in?
That's a great question. I was imagining a really basic, like sans serif, just very like block, like just very basic font. But there's probably something more clever that you could do there.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. This seems like a really open, like if you wanted to go after the thought leader t-shirt space, which seems to be a really narrow niche, there's not very many options. There's a bunch of really poorly designed ones.
There's a real gap in the market here that somebody needs to exploit.
Yeah, we need sarcastic, witty t-shirts that are self-aggrandizing. Right. That market's not been fully explored just yet.
Yeah. But no, so
we're opening up with a convertible note. We're trying to raise $1.5 million.
Say it completely straight faced.
Press at Future Commerce, or investment at futurecommerce.com.
We do have a $40,000 minimum.
It's a $40,000 minimum, 20% discount on Series A.
The Series A. I did want to jump in. I did want to talk about the article you wrote. In full disclosure, I read. First of all, I opened it up and I was like, I've been reading a lot lately. You mentioned the 4 books you read, which are pretty heavy. Talking to Strangers, Malcolm Gladwell, Age of Surveillance Capitalism, and then you said, as I pen this letter, I think about the current state of retail. Target is doubling down its strategy. Walmart is pivoting away from D2C. Venture capital is coming under heavy scrutiny. I'm like going, dude, like you really are becoming a serious writer. And at that point, I was like, can I see this as a tweet thread or a 2-minute video clip? Because I've lost all ability to read long form text. It's absolutely absurd. So
the guy who puts out 26 videos a day and is live streaming every day for 100 days has lost the ability to read
long form text. It's absurd. It's
that sounds about right.
It's very absurd. But I want to very, very selfishly ask you to summarize it here for me, while I have you.
All right. So 2 minutes on the clock. Here's the summary. The summary is there's a lot of things that are happening that I believe will shape the future of the world as we know it for the next 10 years. And they're happening right now. We are coming off of the greatest period in American economic advancement that we have ever known. We've had 11 years of straight economic growth. Right. Okay. And what has given us this new sort of gilded age of more people moving out of middle class into higher earning wages, higher income brackets.
Right.
Right. And at the same time, we have the Fed printed money for 10 years, just printed money and shoved capital into our economy. So a lot of the money that we have in the world is being repurposed to basically act as research and development on what consumers will react to. So you have things like public pensions that are being that are backing private equity firms in big ways, private equity
That was
funds.
the other tweet of yours that I said
Yeah.
was a Mage yes, yes, no. Was that one on? I was like,
Yeah, we'll dive into that.
Your tweets have gone up market from me.
Sorry.
Like,
yeah, I also lost all of my followers. Like I had 9,000 followers at one point. I have 6,600 now. I'm alienating people left and right. Don't ask me how to be a thought leader. I stopped leading thoughts a long time ago. But I'm thinking about this era that we're in all of this activity. And you look at the WeWork debacle. That's what I'm thinking about right now. Okay. And at the same time, I'm thinking about what are the effects on retail and how does the world progress in the next year, right? So as I'm thinking about all this stuff, I got an email in my inbox that reminded me that the movie Fight Club is 20 years old as of Wednesday.
Right.
And it made me remember my favorite scene in Fight Club, where Edward Norton and Brad Pitt are sitting in a bar and they're commiserating because Edward Norton just lost everything. Like I think there was like a fire or something, an explosion. He lost everything, right? And he's commiserating about like all the stuff he lost. He's like, oh, I had a stereo, had a nice stereo. I had a wardrobe that was, really about to be a well-respected wardrobe. And he talks about a sofa. It's like you buy a sofa that can last forever, and then no matter what happens, you just think to yourself, I'll never have to think about my sofa again, right? Because I've got the sofa situation handled.
Right.
And he has this passing line at the very end of that whole rant where he says, I was so close to being complete.
Right.
And that sort of hits you existentially, is that that the things that he owned was the definition of completeness to him. Right. And Brad Pitt says in return, it's playing the character Tyler Durden, he says in return, the things that you own end up owning you.
Right.
And I just kind of follow that down the rabbit hole in this piece, which is, really talking about that's a perfect picture of where we are in consumerism in the West right now, where it's mindless purchasing. How many times have you had something show up on your front door that you bought on Amazon that you forgot that you bought?
Oh my God. Quite a few times. You're like, right. You're like, what is this? Oh yeah.
Yeah. I forgot about that. You had it's not even about the joy of buying anything anymore. Purchasing has lost so much friction that you don't even make a considered purchase anymore. You just hit the button and then you forget about it. And I think that it's like we've become automated as consumers to put less thought into things and react quicker. And the impulse is so fast now. And we've made it so frictionless now that I think we're actually fundamentally less happy with the things that we have because we haven't thought about them. We haven't considered them. And, to wit, a lot of the brands that are selling online, and nothing against Amazon, but a lot of brands on Amazon are just trying to get to the next sale. And they're always trying to treat everything like another. We've missed our 2-minute mark, by the way, a long time ago, but it's always about the next sale.
Why is there a 2-minute mark on this?
Because I said that you said explain it in 2 minutes. I was giving you a 2-minute rundown. Yeah, so it's just all about the run.
I will extend the limit to 15. This is a good topic.
Thank you. So yeah, it's just asking ourselves: are we creating companies and products that have purpose, and are we asking people to spend some of their money and invest in our businesses and invest in products that enrich them? And are we doing that in a way that only keeps them having to come back to us for more and keep having to come back to the trough? Or are we encouraging people to go live their real life and go enjoy their real life? Right. And if we're really honest with ourselves, a lot of what we do in e-commerce is very manipulative. It's very much
juice up those conversion rates.
Yep.
And
it always comes down to getting people to make the decision to buy. And so the thing that I'm starting to care more about is how we can engage people outside of the purchase decision and create a more lasting relationship with the customer that has nothing to do with just the buy decision.
Right.
And so at Future Commerce, the things we've been talking about is, developing into a story around knowing your customer and having sort of a customer bill of rights, like a manifesto of what good what good mindful brands do to engage their customers, and how they draw a line in the sand and don't abuse that relationship that they have with their customer. So that's what that piece was about.
That's really deep, man. I mean, it's funny because the very first thing I thought about when you talked about forgetting buying something on Amazon and forgetting what it was is this cord I have right here, which actually takes my headphones, which are Bluetooth, and connects them to over a regular audio jack. And the reason I had to get it is because when I'm on calls like this over Bluetooth, they'll randomly drop out on me, which of course is a very frustrating experience for having a call or doing a podcast or whatever. And so it's funny because I did forget about what it was when I saw the package the other day. And at the same time, it's very helpful, and it actually improves the quality of my connection with other people that I'm talking to by making those less frustrating. So I'm kind of thinking to myself, I'm like, I mean, it's a small thing, but it is sort of meaningfully improving. I mean, it's improving in a small way, working relationships with people and things like that. So
yeah, that's something that you could argue that you need. I think there's things that we buy that nobody
that
needs.
we just don't need. That
Right.
you just don't need at all. You just buy
right.
because yeah.
Anyway, so that's and in many cases, I see a lot of brands trying to do things to get people to make a decision to purchase that are just patently not true. There's a lot of FOMO that goes into, you and I talked 5 years ago on the podcast. We were talking about older shows. We talked about confirm shaming and,
right.
Dark, what would be called dark patterns.
Dark
now.
patterns. Yeah.
We didn't have a name for it back then when we first started talking about it, but there's these, sort of passive aggressive, well, I guess I just don't like discounts, sort of dismiss messages and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think that it's very tempting as a brand, or very tempting, especially when you're trying to meet certain goals that you set for yourself, to succumb to those sort of tactics. But I think there are brands who have decided that they're not going to do that. They're not going to rely on fear of missing out. They're not going to rely on manipulative techniques. And they've sort of set that as the standard for themselves, that they're not going to resort to those things. And I think that not only are they better for it as a brand, we're all better for it as people.
Right. I mean, I think another example of that is like when brands don't make a real big deal out of Black Friday discounts. Black Friday is one of these weird cultural phenomenons where it's like, oh yeah, I got to leave Thanksgiving early tonight so I can go camp out in the parking lot to get $200 off a TV. And so I think some of the more conscious brands are like pushing the Black Friday thing less or not at all, or not giving steep discounts and whatnot. I want to say, it's been a while, but back when I was at Clean, I want to say that they did that, which I thought was great. They didn't make a real big deal out of it. But yeah, definitely there's this interesting intersection between commerce and kind of culture and values.
There's a story that comes up every year around Black Friday or the run up to Black Friday. I guarantee there will be one in the next week or two. But going back all the way, just a quick Google search. If you look for Black Friday is selfish, every year, the number of people who identify as buying gifts for themselves on Black Friday or getting a product that they were going to purchase anyway for a cheaper discount that happens on Black Friday grows. And there's a large number of people who are actually starting to ask the question, like, Black Friday used to be when you start your holiday shopping to give gifts at Christmas. I don't know that Black Friday and Cyber Monday are about that anymore, because not many people are buying, so there's certain types of products you probably just don't buy for other people. You buy it for yourself. Yeah. And so then the question starts to kind of turn around into, what are we really motivated by in those holidays? It's a manufactured holiday that, or is a, maybe came about in an organic way, but is really used to trigger our internal, want to, like, the hunter-gatherer part of ourselves. Someone like wants to hoard stuff away and get it, at a better discount. And and you wind up getting, you get some I did the same. I was just talking about this with you a couple months ago during Prime Day, that I wound up buying a Nespresso machine that I was going to buy for myself anyway, and I got it, cheaper. I could have bought my wife her birthday present, because her birthday's in June, but I didn't. Like, I bought myself an espresso machine.
Right.
So I'm just as guilty as anyone else.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, and then when you're, being a dad and stuff, it's like you're the last person, you're the last priorities for as far as receiving gifts. So it's kind of like, just get myself whatever I need, and
few people watching the live stream right now. Get active in the chat, ask some questions here, get us off this topic, but
get your questions in.
Liz, welcome to the Jason and Scott Show.
I actually have a question for you about preacher sneakers.
Yeah.
So
this is like the Kalen interview podcast. I'm on Kalen Talk right now. I love this.
Yeah, we're going nuts. So I've been looking at your Instagram more, and this is kind of funny. So I believe it's one of your stories where you said it was order number 12, preacher sneakers. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. So he got like the 12th order from this new brand, and you tagged the Instagram account. And I'm sort of new to Instagram, right? So I don't really get it. I'm trying to get it. So I look at their account, and I'm going and I see, first of all, their Instagram account doesn't have a link to their website. So I'm looking at it, and then I'm like, well, it's got to be an e-commerce site because he bought something. But then I'm looking at it, and it's like preacher is wearing sneakers, and it's like showing the price of it'll show a split screen with a clip of a preacher or some sort of whatever, and then it'll show how much their sneakers cost. And then I was like going, wait, and then I Googled it, and then their website doesn't come up, but you find news articles talking about, oh, there's this Instagram account that's throwing shade at preachers. They, throwing shade at them, like, oh, look at the expensive shoes they're wearing. And I was like, wait a second, I'm so confused. Is this an e-commerce site, or is it an Instagram site making fun of people? And then like I could never actually find the site where you bought the shoes. So I spent like 5 minutes trying to figure it out.
It's so what I bought was the sticker pack. So they are it started out as an Instagram that was, as you said, throwing shade at, by the way, they're on Shopify, and I know we're on MageTalk right now. Okay. But it's an Instagram account that started out making, basically making a not very well veiled criticism of preachers who, ostensibly take people's tithes or money, right? And then they're wearing luxury clothing. Right. So you see people wearing Gucci, you see people wearing Prada, you see people wearing Fendi. Right. And at the same time, they're also wearing sneakers. And most of these people are wearing sneakers that, if you're in the sneaker world and you know something about sneakers, you look at them and you're like, oh my gosh, like on resale, that's $1,000 sneaker or a 4,000. Like there's one guy who is sort of like this one preacher, his name is John Gray. Who has these Kanye red Yeezy Red Octobers, and those are like $4,000 or $5,000 sneakers, right?
Oh my god!
And so there's this like criticism of, should people, is this a good way to spend your money, or whatever. And anyway, so it's kind of become its own merch along the way. So the guy, he started a podcast where he interviews preachers that wear these sneakers, like trying to justify why.
Yeah.
What I really liked was
is the podcast confrontational?
No, not really. In many cases, like the podcast is more like, what makes you want to own something like that? And it's actually quite deep. One of the things most of these guys are used to public speaking, right? So they're really used to being, kind of giving you a whole well thought out, reasoned argument to why they think what they think. The most recent guest on one of his shows was a guy named Jonathan Merritt, who wrote a book that I read earlier this year called Learning to Speak God from Scratch. Jonathan Merritt is a writer for The Atlantic and has written for other publications too, like the New York Times. Great writer, and also a man of faith. And but he was talking about sort of the, this idea that people are untouchable, right? And people shouldn't be subjected to criticism. Like, this is not the forum in which to ask these questions. Like, these are questions that shouldn't even be asked. And I loved his sort of his thing is like, yeah, like why can't we ask the hard questions? Why can't we hold people who are role models accountable? You know, these, I just really like that hard questions in faith communities are being asked. I do also love the fact that from a content to commerce point of view, this guy is killing it,
right?
because he's found a whole area of content that no one even knew existed.
Right.
He's exploited it to make his own merch. It's freaking genius.
I mean, it's funny because now the phrase e-commerce nihilism is it describes this like perfectly.
It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect, because there's nothing more nihilistic than basically creating a merch brand out of a
cultural criticism of preachers that are engaging in commerce in a way that's disingenuous or out of alignment with their values.
Yeah. Isn't that great?
It's like levels on levels on levels of
the wheel just keeps turning, Kalen.
Yeah. It's sneakers all the way down.
Yeah, it is sneakers. And you know what's funny is that this, there's kind of a moment happening culturally too, where it's shifting, where now Kanye, who has the Yeezy brand, who, by the way, Yeezy did over $1 billion of retail sales in the last 12 months. And
over $1 billion of retail. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's just Yeezy alone, not Adidas. The Yeezy label under Adidas has done $1 billion in retaal sales. And Kanye of that has seen, almost $150 million profit out of that enterprise. And that's just the apparel, right? That's just the apparel. It has nothing else to do with the other parts of what makes Kanye.
Does that factor in? I'm assuming it wouldn't factor in the sometimes big discrepancy in what's paid in the aftermarket. In other words,
it does not factor that in at all. This is not a total economic impact of Yeezy. Right. This is just a retail sales uplift from Adidas.
Gotcha.
What I think is really interesting, and by the way, we can actually bring this back to Magento if you really want to.
I knew you'd pull it off. I knew I had faith.
It took us 40 minutes.
I knew you'd bring it back.
But in the world of Yeezy, just kind of why I started talking about it, Kanye now professes to be a Christian, and he's putting out an album called Jesus is King, which I think is really interesting. And
he's got the whole Sunday service thing.
He's got the Sunday service thing going on, which I think is really interesting. He is not a stranger to criticism. And
you think?
And so he's a very interesting person. And I just find it
talented in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And also somebody that has their challenges, right?
Like very much so. And also, like, it has been called a hypocrite on, so many different occasions. He's kind of immune to it at this point, I'm sure. But he's got an interesting platform as an artist who is now doing retail. And I think when you look at the content side of content businesses that are engaging in retail with their now built-in audiences, it's very much what we talk about on Future Commerce sometimes, which is the building an audience and then turning that into a retail enterprise. That's what Preachers and Sneakers has done, which is, amassed an audience, hit the front page in the New York Times, and then has turned that into its own enterprise. And they're doing things the right way too. They give a lot of money away to things like Doctors Without Borders. They're giving a good portion of their retail sales to I think Life Water or Blood Water, one of the well building NGOs that exist.
Charity Water or
Charity Water. There's a bunch of them. But they kind of have to, right? Like that making the criticism in and of itself, and then having a for-profit enterprise probably would be cause a problem in and of itself.
And so what was the Magento tie-in?
The Magento tie-in. So I actually had a conversation a few months ago, actually back in January now, with a retailer who used to be on Magento, who was sort of really jaded about the way that the sneaker market over a period of a few years, how the sneaker market caused them to have to invest in technology in their business. So they used to be on Magento. They had a number of stores. They were, sneaker and streetwear brand. And it used to be that when Yeezy would drop a shoe, they wouldn't sell it through Adidas.com or through the Yeezy branded site. They would do it through their retailer sites. So if they were to drop a shoe, you would go to Kith, you would go to End, you would go to any one of these individual retailers. And so when the shoe drops, you get millions and millions and millions of hits, and it would crash their websites, And so you're investing in more and more cloud technology to handle scale. You're combating things with Magento not being able to handle the volume of purchase all at one time.
Right.
So these retailers are investing over and over and over into more capable, like faster coding. They're putting queuing, technology on the website. They're putting, auto scale cloud infrastructure into place. They're putting CloudFront in front of stuff. They're putting, Fastly in front of it. They're doing everything they possibly can to handle the crush of traffic.
Right.
And then, one day, Adidas and Yeezy pivot, and now they just sell direct to consumer, and they've cut all the wholesalers out. Now all these wholesalers are left with, huge Magento site licenses and huge hosting agreements.
Brutal.
And all of these software licensing contracts to have to make good on, but they no longer have the sales to back it up.
That's rough.
Yeah.
Monthly pricing is a beautiful thing on many,
you just had a whole thing about, monthly versus annual and contracts.
I did. It's
what
funny.
was that about?
Yeah. So basically I was just ranting about when you see, when you're checking out a SaaS product and it says the monthly price, so it says $20 a month. You go, awesome. You go to check out. And then it says, we bill annually. So you can pay, whatever, it's $240, or you can pay monthly and you can pay, $25 a month or whatever. And it's like, bro, there's no such thing as $20 a month billed annually. Like that's $240 a year. Yeah. Like that little bait and switch tactic just drives me crazy. But yeah, it's funny that one trended on LinkedIn a little bit, which was fun.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what's happening in the world of Commerce Hero right now.
Commerce Hero. Well, I brought Gary on board, Gary Smith, who was was obviously with Jamerson for a while, and he kind of he left a while ago to kind of do his own. So he's been doing his own consulting and stuff like that, I think, for I don't know how long, 6 months or a year. And so anyways, I needed some help with operations and stuff. So he's helping out on a part-time basis, and we're just a couple weeks in, but that's going great because I need help with ops, man. I'm not good at that. So he's helping me get things streamlined and stuff like that. And so
that's awesome.
So that's been cool. Yeah. We've been doing calls daily and just getting things handed off, and he's much more focused. Some people are just more geared one way or another. And I'm very slowly but surely realizing I really shouldn't try to do everything because I'm not really good at it. And so that's been cool. There was actually a job that I thought was neat. It's a I just posted it. It's pretty cool. It's a B2B marketplace in the flower industry on M2, and they're just doing like an initial beta trial type thing, but they're looking for like 75 to 150 an hour, 10 hours a week kind of thing. So it's a decent gig. It's cool. It's something that makes sense for Magento, right? Because it's a B2B marketplace
for sure
on M2. And this is actually, and I know you're going to immediately reverse engineer who it is, but there's actually somebody in West Palm. So I don't know if you might have.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about. But anyways, I just thought that was a neat gig. And so that's a cool
that's pretty cool. And that's a really interesting space to be in, actually.
Yeah.
Right now there's a lot of logistics, and there's, shipping live products, that sort of thing.
Dude, West Palm is a hot spot, man. You guys got a lot of stuff going on out there.
It's crazy.
You guys punch above your weight.
It's weird. We're a weird little place. I called it Narnia earlier this week. We had we just have really cool people just come through here at some point during the year all the time. It's just, Harley Finkelstein, this COO of Shopify, was in the office a few months ago for no good reason.
Oh, nice.
We had
that's really cool.
I know. So
That's
weird.
super cool.
Yeah. He was just sitting in my office. He's like, what are you doing here? I'm like, this is my office. What are you doing here?
Yeah.
He's like, he poked his head in my office and he's like looking at these Magento, my Magento Master Awards. He's like, hey man, maybe you should consider Shopify.
You're like, hey, I got a couple open tickets with you guys. Let me bend your ear real quick.
Really interesting. And then this week, a guy named Vincenzo Landino, who's from Columbus, Ohio, and does a lot of video with like SAP and bunch of corporate video, but also happens to work with Web Smith from 2PM.
Oh, okay.
Just happened to be in town. He's like, oh, dude, I didn't know you lived here. Let's grab coffee. So it's
cool.
Such a strange little place in the world where people happen to come through.
Dude, that's awesome.
And South Florida has a lot of Magento. A lot of Magento
going on down there. There really is. There really is.
I think too, strategically, and not to give the secret sauce away for something digital, but we, 200 of the Fortune 500 have subsidiaries or an office somewhere in Florida.
So there's a reason you guys strategically selected that location.
Has nothing to do with the fact that I happen to live here already.
Yeah,
but it's been a very strategic place for growth.
Yeah. Can I ask you a random, have you been following the startup podcast at all? Gimlet Media, Alex?
Dude, I started the final season just to kind of catch up on it. And you've been ranting on it. I haven't finished it. So
okay, that's perfect because I can ask you, I want to ask you a random question totally out of context.
Okay.
And which of course you're great.
What would you spend $1 billion on?
What would you spend $1 billion on? You yourself, either personally, as whatever, however you want to answer it, as Future Commerce, as what would you, let's say as Future Commerce, maybe, I don't know, whatever. What would you do with $1 billion? It's such a hard question to answer, like, unless it's something you've been thinking about for a while.
No. I think $1 billion is an unfathomable amount of money.
Exactly.
It's $1,000 million.
Exactly.
It's $1,000 million.
Yeah.
If I had $1 million right now, I know exactly what I would do with $1 million. I'd, hire my whole team at Future Commerce would be full time, and we would be, building up our content on ARM to put out content 5 days a week on the world of retail.
Right.
If I had $10 million, oh gosh, I mean, we'd probably build a lot of physical infrastructure to do video at a really fast pace and hire a bunch of killer people.
Right.
We'd go and we'd find all the best talent. We'd, hire them away from wherever they need to be hired away from. And we'd do a great mix of build and buy.
So far, you're doing a pretty impressive job. You're
10 million,
like going one order of magnitude at a time. This is pretty good.
100 million. I mean, why? I mean, I would go and acquire a bunch of media properties that are already killing it in the space and consolidate them.
Okay. Okay.
500 million? Who even freaking knows? How could you even possibly begin to think about, like, what do you even do with that?
It's just too much.
It's too much.
It's too much.
It's too much. So $1 billion, I can't even begin to tell you what I would spend $1 billion. I mean, like, anybody could live the rest of their lives on $1 billion. So
yeah, it's just ridiculous.
It's a ridiculous amount. It's a stupid question, actually.
Yeah, it is.
What would you spend $1 billion on, Caleb?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. Like I've been thinking about this question. I did some content on it ever since I heard it. And I'm like, I don't know. Like even the way that you tried to answer it and did a pretty good job and got pretty far, I'm just like, I give up. I don't know. Like I would love to be at a point where I was talking to my buddy about this recently. Like you think about Elon Musk and the type of people that have these goals that are larger than life, that can drive them and be powerfully motivating. And which, I mean, I bet Elon Musk, if you ask what he'd do with $1 billion, he's like, well, what would I do with 10?
If I only had $1 billion, maybe start a rocket ship company, I guess.
Yeah. But like, I wish that I aspire to get to a point that I actually have a vision that's that grandiose, but I just don't. I just don't. And I gotta push back on your 100 million on acquiring a bunch of media properties. Like, don't you think that would be problematic? Like in the sense of like scaling the quality of what you're doing. If you acquired a whole bunch of existing media properties, wouldn't they do it differently? Would they really get it as far as what you guys are trying to do and the type of content you're trying to put out?
Yeah, that's a great point. And for the 10 seconds of thought that I put into it, I would say no. They would all do what I say because I have all the money.
There you go.
How about for $1 billion we buy Magento back from Adobe?
Oh, that'd be dope.
And that should play well to the Magento crowd. You can actually crop
No,
that and share that all over Twitter to put that in your video pipeline.
There we go. There you
No,
go.
I don't think we could afford it. Actually,
We can take a shot at
1.68
it.
billion. I mean, that's a lot, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's, you know, if a depreciated asset, $1 billion, $1 billion is an unfathomable amount of money. It really is. Mitchell Cowie in the chat asks, is this in cash or assets? These are two different questions. I like the way you think, Mitchell.
That is a great, yeah. Mitchell's a smart guy. That
if
is
it's in assets. Question. I mean, you could probably get a $250 million loan from someone like Goldman Sachs on that, on the equity. Right. So
no, let's say, I mean, whenever you have $1 billion, who knows what format it's in, but let's say it's liquid. Let's go nuts. I
want $1 billion in bananas. Just what does $1 billion in bananas look like?
It looks like a lot of bananas that are gonna go out of, what's the word? They're gonna spoil.
Yeah, that's a lot of banana bread at the end of the day.
Yeah, you're gonna end up with a whole lot of banana bread. You're gonna have to turn it into powder for safe, safe storage.
Let me ask you a crazy freaking question.
Okay.
If you had $1 billion if you had $1 billion, could you build an e-commerce platform that rivals Magento? Could you build a modern e-commerce platform with $1 billion? Could you build a company that makes software that rivals the feature functionality and the community of Magento?
Wow, that's a really good question, because in terms of just building software, yes, of course you could build that functionality. But then the question is, then the question is, what about the community? What about the ecosystem? How do you measure all of that? And it's funny because I can't help but think that like a significant amount of the value in the Magento code base was written quite a few years ago, right? Like there's a lot of power that went into those initial lines of code, right? EAV and multi-store and things like that.
You don't need EAV anymore.
That's right.
I'm just saying you don't. Okay.
Multi-store though. I mean,
but multi-store, Kalen. That's why every single one of the major that's why every single major platform right now has multi-store at the core.
What are you talking about?
It's debatable how many stores actually need multi-store, but I digress.
Yeah, no, I know that's.
I think if you had a powerful OMS, you never need multi-store because it all winds up in the back end anyway. If you had a powerful PIM that connects to all of your e-commerce platform. I know a lot of e-commerce or a lot of retail businesses now that have all of the e-commerce platforms somewhere in their portfolio, and somehow they make it work, right? Like,
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Mitchell thinks that with $1 billion, you could rebuild Magento. Features, yes. Community stuff, you can't buy that. But you know what I see, and here's the e-commerce nihilist in me.
Yes.
Okay.
That is what we look to you. That is what we look to you for.
I know. Thank you. Cynically, remember how we defined $1 billion was 1,000 million, right? Yeah. Could you take $10 million over the next 5 years and put on stellar events worldwide that are free to the public for anyone to come to, and have all the best bands, all the best food, all the best developers, pay for their travel, you could subsidize your way,
right,
and gift your way into having a lot of participation up front. Now, I can't guarantee that it would have staying power.
Yeah.
But that's what ShopTalk did. ShopTalk as a organization has single-handedly rivaled NRF, IRC, eShop.org, and every other major retail-focused event because they just gave every retailer in North America a free pass to come to their show.
That's
and it's venture backed, and they've disrupted. They've done with venture what Uber did, which is disrupt an ingratiated or an incumbent organization.
That's interesting. I didn't know too much. I've heard that a lot of people really like ShopTalk. I didn't know too much about sort of what their growth strategy was. But it's interesting. Like there's an argument to be made that one of the reasons why, I mean, it's so when I hear it's, I've never really raised money, but it's so easy. I mean, there's tons of investors that would love to put money into tech, right? And it's hard. Like if it was easy to say, okay, this is the amount of money that you need to put in to replicate a success in tech, you could have endless amounts of money from investors who would want to do that. But there's something fundamentally difficult about doing it, right? About creating a success in tech, which is why there's an imbalance there in the market between like the investment dollars, right?
Yeah, but the ones who have invested, even when they are considered to be like legacy or laggards in our world, think about PayPal, right? PayPal is 20 some years old now,
Right.
and they have invested their way into modern prominence by continuing to do things like like the mobile optimization initiative, by providing like opt-in contra dollars to help subsidize small businesses being able to afford replatforming. They have bought their way into with Venmo and Braintree
Right.
into modern expressions of payments technology platforms. So yeah, I think spending money and spending it in the right way can give you credibility, because you're going to spend money on the things that people that you're trying to gain the credibility with care about.
I heard a really interesting analysis from Jason Calacanis while we're just going all over the map.
That's fine.
Who I know here, it's like your bro.
Oh, no. I've met him on a couple of occasions.
I've seen the pictures on Instagram. Okay, calm down. I've seen you guys together on Instagram. But anyways, I saw he was giving an interesting analysis of Apple versus the other major tech companies, and Apple does not make acquisitions. I mean, you just talked about some great acquisitions PayPal has made. All of the other major tech companies make acquisitions, and it's part of their strategy. And Apple's very much like must be invented here, like do not like not invented here syndrome kind of a thing. And they haven't been super innovative for a while. And he was saying, look, they should acquire Tesla and Peloton and put one of those suckers in every Apple store, right? And I was thinking to myself, that's genius. And it's interesting with Peloton. I've been reading about some of the things in their S1. What is it? Their investment papers that they file.
Yep.
And it's absurd. They're like, we are not currently profitable. We most likely have no path to future profitability. They're like, they are never going to be profitable. It's like insane, and so anyways, like, and I guess,
yeah, I don't want to be the guy to, publicly criticize Jason because I didn't actually watch that particular. I'm sure that was on This Week in Startups or something.
Retelling of it. Yeah. It was a clip on like a business news show.
Oh, probably. Yeah.
But
that sounds about right.
A poor retelling of it. But
well, in the last 2 years alone, Apple acquired Beats by Dre, which you made Jay-Z a billionaire. And also, and Dr. Dre, sorry. And by the way, they also acquired this year, which we talked about on Future Commerce, a asthma startup. So it's like in the health space, and they're doubling down on healthcare in a big way.
Oh, that's really cool.
And so there's like an asthma monitoring device that they acquired.
Oh, that's super.
The name escapes me at the moment. I think they also acquired Shazam, which was that like app that listens to music and environmentally, and then like tells you what the song is, like music fingerprinting. So I agree with the premise in that, like, unlike there's other companies who acquire all day long. Amazon does a lot of M&A.
Yeah, like tens and hundreds of acquisitions, right? Or 10 or 20 per year, something absurd.
Yeah. So
but we've got Cunningham's law in effect here. Best way to get the right answer in the
that's
universe
right. Yeah.
is
Yeah.
to say the wrong thing and be corrected. So that
I wasn't sure of what that was called.
Corrected.
Actually happened last week in that I couldn't remember what Cunningham's law was called. So I just put it out there as Gibraltar's law. And then someone came along and it's like, actually it's Cunningham's law.
That's hysterical.
Literally that in effect. Yeah.
That's perfect. That's so perfect. Yeah. Oh man. Well,
can you believe it's been an hour already?
Yeah, that went quickly. Quickly. We managed to get some Magento content in there. So I'm gonna give us a pat on the back for that one. For that.
We one area that we could probably improve on is talking about the can I get a plug-in for my Something Digital Magento End of Life series that I'm doing on the blog?
100%. I can't believe we didn't talk about this the whole time.
Yeah. So if you get a chance, I'm kind of proud of this this stupid blog series that I'm authoring.
It's hilarious.
For the whole month of October.
Hilarious.
And so the month of October, because it's spooky Halloween month, we're spending the month on the Something Digital blog talking about my favorite horror movies and how the plots of those horror movies can be interpreted to be telling the story of Magento's End of Life alongside that. And not just because I'm trying to create, somewhat controversial content so that you go pay attention to a blog, but if you've ever watched a horror movie or if you, like me, were like terrified of horror movies as a kid, when you get to the very end of the movie and, you rip the mask off the bad guy and it's like, old man Cratchit across the street, it's not so scary anymore. Like taking the mask off the bad guy kind of humanizes it in a way. And I think when we face down this Magento End of Life that's coming in June 2020, we're all better for it, and it takes some of the fear out of it. So if you're a retailer or if you're a technology partner and you have and Magento 1 is a good portion of your business and you rely on Magento 1 in a big way, this you might find it amusing to read through this series. Part 3 comes out on Tuesday, and you'll have heard it here first. So it follows the events of the movie It Follows,
Very
which
nice.
if you haven't seen the movie It Follows, don't.
What are you hearing? What are you hearing on the ground from merchants on M1, merchants looking to make, merchants that are at that crossroads? Yeah,
we've spent 2 years now migrating our portfolio of customers at Something Digital over. And we're, if we're not taking long-term support contracts for customers on Magento 1 that aren't already planning to move to Magento 2. So our entire portfolio is already on Magento 2 or Shopify Plus. So we're not having to worry about supporting legacy versions of Magento. If you need legacy support for Magento 1, there are plenty of systems integrators out there that I'm sure will support you in perpetuity. But at Something Digital, we're very risk averse, and that's not something that we're looking to do. As far as the move, it's been a bit of a bear because Magento 2 is itself a moving target. So Magento 2.0 and 2.1 are both end of life, and which actually is a good tie-in to this week's blog, which followed Final Destination. Right? You ever see the movie Final Destination?
Final Destination. I feel like I should have, but
yeah. There's a plane crash. Or there's supposed to be a plane crash, and this group of friends, like a high school group of friends, have this like premonition that the plane is going to crash. They all get off the plane, and so the plane crashes. They avoid death, right? And then one by one, death picks off all the friends until it gets back to the person who had the premonition in the first place. That's basically what Magento 2 End of Life has been. Is like, Magento 1, you're watching all your friends get slowly picked off. So you're on 1.14, you've seen 2.0 get picked off, you've seen 2.1 got picked off, 2.2 is coming right behind, you're next. And
that's so funny.
Yeah, so we're having some fun on the blog. It's not gotten I've not gotten any hate mail over it yet, but some people some people like to hate on me anyway. So
yeah, it's probably coming. Are we having the Mage 1? I think we are having the Mage 1 guys on, right? To talk.
Yeah. Fabian Blechschmidt and some of the other folks from Mage 1 in that.
Yeah. And you were like, just to be clear, this is not going to be a softball interview, right? You may be a little critical
A little bit
of their approach,
a little
potentially, possibly.
possibly.
Yeah.
You know what I think legitimizes their approach is Nexus and Mage Mojo both sort of telling the story that they'll pitch in on long-term support too.
Yeah.
So if you have a consortium of many businesses and individuals and, technology providers that are going to support the product, then maybe you have a better story. So yeah, the more people that pitch and support, the less the criticism has weight, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Only time will tell. Only time will tell.
This is
this
is good. Thanks for letting me plug that.
Oh yeah, no, I wouldn't call that a plug. I would call that good content.
Speaking of like good content, you had a point in here about Scott Galloway, and I needed to hear what the heck, what in the world you're on about Scott Galloway.
I have only recently discovered Scott Galloway. You've probably known of him for a long time, but he predicted the WeWork thing. It sounds like he has a fairly accurate track record of predictions in tech. He's a professor at NYU, professor of marketing at NYU, also an entrepreneur, I believe, previously. And anyways, so I had posted, what did I put? Oh, I had responded to his thing on Facebook's inflated viewership metrics, which was basically, so Facebook is settling a lawsuit for like 40 million because they have inflated viewership metrics on their ad platform, anywhere from 150% to 900% or something like that. And anyways, he had posted about that, saying like, well, this is a slap on the wrist. It's a fraction of a percentage of their annual income. And I'm like, part of me, like half of the time I think to myself, man, this guy is absolutely brilliant. And the other half of the time I think like, well, maybe he just likes to kind of say incendiary things and get things riled up. And so anyway, so you replied to me on LinkedIn and you said something to the effect of, your first mistake was reading a tweet by Scott Galloway. But in the case of the inflated viewership metrics, it's like, dude, if you are building a business on viewership metrics of any ad campaign, you're completely doing it wrong. You need to be looking at actual real world results. You need to be looking at sales that are being driven, right? Like real human beings. Like, I mean, me and you talk a little bit about the ad campaign you did for that event in LA, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. And you got butts and seats, So anyways, that was my take on that. But it sounded to me like you had a take on Scott Galloway. So I thought it'd be.
I mean, the take is he's like one of those polarizing. He's like another polarizing figure on the internet who doesn't seem to show a lot of empathy. Who has, who says things specifically because they're controversial, and he's like a shock jock, right? And sort of unabashedly so. And yeah, I people like him are. It's funny to watch the progression because that's how Gary Vaynerchuk used to be. Gary Vaynerchuk used to be very much like that.
Yep.
And if you're watching,
still think of him as being like that,
but he's not like that anymore.
Right.
If you watch his videos now, he's all like, give love to people,
love, compassion,
show people compassion and kindness, and like take people, don't tear people down, build people up. I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So I think it's it's another sort of polarizing figure who, probably has real true insight from, his very real experience. I don't know how he gets away with some of the things he says. It's crazy.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But I don't know. It just feels like a lot of negativity and sort of down talk. And I just like, I'm at that point in my life where I'm like, I don't need that.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is that the criticism of the Facebook thing was sort of couched as, well, I'm so concerned about all these businesses that have gone bankrupt due to the incorrect metrics. And that's so horrible of Facebook. And they should have to pay a lot more money. And it's like, come on, man. We don't, how bad do we feel about a company that ran ad campaigns on viewership metrics? Like, you shouldn't. I mean, you always have to feel bad for anybody that's had their job or livelihood affected, and I don't know if that's the case or not. But anyways, point is, it didn't. I don't know. I think.
Yeah, I think that the doomsday prophets will use any sort of thing to, and I think of him as such right now, because he never. Here's a good piece of advice that you didn't ask for, but this is how I sort of think about it. If you follow someone for a long period of time and they never, ever say anything positive, like they never predict anything positive, they never have anything like all that they ever talk about is stuff that's like, controversial, that's down talk. It's, sort of biting criticism. It's sarcastic. There's, those sorts of things are, I don't know. It's like they're going to be right eventually. And when they're right, they're going to tell you how right they were. So of course something's going to turn out, something bad's going to happen eventually. And that's how doomsday prophets profit.
Yeah.
But
well, that's a great note to end on. Great,
terrible note to end on.
Upbeat note to end on.
Yeah. I'm glad that we talked about Scott Galloway right at the end of the show.
Yeah.
A great idea of mine.
Yeah. Perfect. We should have closed that on the M1, on your M1 series.
Yeah, we'll fix it in post.
Yeah. We'll fix it in post. Awesome. Well,
thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks for watching, and be sure to give us a 5-star on Stitcher Radio and Spotify. And
click that thumbs up. Won't you smash that like button? Click that
thumbs up. Smash that like button. Hey,
become one of our Bell brothers. Click that bell.
Click that bell. Smash.
Click that bell. You get notified whenever there's a new episode of MageTalk. All right.
And all right.